Despite a ceasefire that was agreed almost a year ago, the Israeli army carries out attacks on southern Lebanon on an almost daily basis. According to the Lebanese Ministry of Health, more than 250 Lebanese have been killed since the ceasefire came into effect in November 2024. The tensions at the border and the intensity with which the Israeli army is destroying infrastructure in southern Lebanon are fueling a growing sense among the population that a new round of fighting with Hezbollah could flare up at any moment, even though the group has been severely weakened by the war. So how did the Israeli-Lebanese tensions start, and why does it seem to be a never-ending conflict? Since the US brokered agreement came into effect, which was supposed to end more than a year of war, Israel has carried out around 100 airstrikes on Lebanese territory, mainly using drones, according to the UN. The UN peacekeeping mission, UNIFIL, recorded more than 6,600 violations of Lebanese airspace, not only along the border but also deep inland and over the capital Beirut. Israel also continues to occupy 5 strategic hilltop positions on Lebanese territory, despite agreements to withdraw. Prime Minister Netanyahu's government claims to be acting in self-defense against Hezbollah in the border region. But according to UN rapporteurs, the ongoing attacks are actually hindering the Lebanese authorities in their efforts to disarm the south. According to Lebanese analyst Ali Rizk, the ongoing military pressure is part of a broader Israeli strategy. He claims the continued violations of the ceasefire are part of Israel's efforts to hold on to whatever it achieved in the war, namely a weakened Hezbollah. Israel will stop at nothing to prevent Hezbollah from regaining its former strength. The roots of the tensions between Israel and Lebanon go back many years, and as always, when discussing the history behind Middle Eastern geopolitics, it is always difficult to pick a starting point, not to mention fully explaining all the details of the conflict. It was the year 1943 when Lebanon gained its independence from France. Lebanon's unwritten national pact of 1943 required that its president be Maronite Christian, its speaker of the parliament to be a Shia Muslim, its prime minister Sunni Muslim, and a deputy speaker of parliament and deputy prime minister be Greek Orthodox. Despite this, Lebanon's political instability remained unresolved. Loyalty to religious sects was further complicated by internal divisions within each community, making true stability difficult to achieve. Within the Maronite Christian camp, there were deep political differences. Among the Sunni Muslims, political views were just as diverse. More united was the country that emerged at Lebanon's southern border in 1948, the State of Israel. During the following Arab-Israeli War, Lebanon decided to not participate in the war and only took part in the Battle of al-Malikiya on the 5th to the 6th of June 1948. Christian leaders, especially the Maronites, were cautious about getting too involved in Arab wars and preferred Western alignment. Muslim leaders, particularly Sunnis, sympathized with the Palestinians and broader Arab nationalism. This split shaped Lebanon's later politics and its complicated relationship with both the Arab world and Israel. In the aftermath of 1948, over 100,000 Palestinian refugees fled to Lebanon, mostly settling in the south of the country. Others ended up in Jordan, where they conducted operations against Israel. By the end of the 1960s, Jordan had become the main base for Palestinian guerrilla organizations fighting against Israel. After the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees had crossed into Jordan, and among them, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, under Yasser Arafat, quickly grew in strength. By 1970, the PLO and its various factions, such as Fatah and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, operated almost as a state within a state. They ran checkpoints, collected taxes, and launched attacks on Israel from Jordanian soil, all which undermined King Hussein's authority and provoked growing tensions between the Jordanian monarchy and the Palestinian fighters. The situation came to a head in September 1970 when Palestinian militants hijacked several Western airliners and brought them to Jordan, while others attempted to assassinate the king. In response, the Jordanian army moved to crush the PLO in what became known as Black September. Fierce fighting broke out in Amman and other cities. Tanks shelled Palestinian neighborhoods, thousands were killed, and the PLO was eventually overwhelmed. Syria sent forces across the border to support the Palestinians, but under heavy US and Israeli pressure, Damascus quickly pulled back. By mid-1971, the PLO was decisively defeated and expelled from Jordan. Most of the PLO's leadership and armed units fled overland, crossing northern Jordan into Syria and then onward into Lebanon, which at the time had a weak central government and large Palestinian refugee population. Syria allowed the PLO to pass through, seeing the movement as a useful ally against Israel. Around 3,000 to 5,000 fighters, along with their commanders and families, relocated to Lebanon, particularly to the Palestinian refugee camps around Beirut and in southern Lebanon, near the Israeli border. Once established there, the PLO quickly rebuilt its military and political network, resuming attacks against Israel from Lebanese territory. This dramatically altered Lebanon's internal balance. Many Lebanese Muslims supported the Palestinian cause, while much of the Maronite Christian population viewed the PLO's presence as a growing threat to Lebanon's sovereignty. The influx of armed Palestinians thus deepened the country's sectarian divisions and helped set the stage for the Lebanese Civil War that erupted in 1975. And this brings me to the 1975-1990 Lebanese Civil War, perhaps one of the most complicated conflicts to explain, and different factions within the country as well as foreign backers participated in this terrible conflict that left between 120,000 and 150,000 people dead. Syria occupied a large part of the west of the country until the early 2000s. The south of Lebanon became the main front in the Arab-Israeli conflict, drawing in Israel itself, which would invade Lebanon in both 1978 and 1982 to drive out the PLO again. An important side effect of the 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon was the rise of the Shiite militant group Hezbollah. This group has deep ties with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon brought immense suffering and destruction to Lebanese civilians. Countless families, particularly among the impoverished Shia population in the south, were driven from their homes and forced to rebuild their lives in the crowded southern suburbs of Beirut. The war once again exposed the deadly logic at the core of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Israeli leaders and generals insisted that they had no alternative but to use overwhelming force, arguing that responsibility for civilian deaths lay with terrorists who sought Israel's destruction. Israel's campaign succeeded in driving Yasser Arafat and the PLO out of Lebanon, but in doing so, it created a far more formidable enemy. The invasion coincided with a moment of transformation in the Shia world. For centuries, politically marginalized, the Shia community drew new strength from the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. In the chaotic aftermath of the war, Iran's new rulers saw an opportunity to strike at Israel indirectly. Working with radicalized Lebanese, they helped channel the anger of Lebanon's displaced and disillusioned Shia population into a new movement, Hezbollah, the Party of God. In its early years, Hezbollah was driven more by faith and ideology than by battlefield skills. Iranian advisors trained its fighters in guerrilla tactics, warning them against the suicidal open-field assaults that has cost so many lives in the past. By the 1990s, Hezbollah had evolved into a disciplined and lethal force. In 1993, Israel launched Operation Accountability, a week-long attack against Lebanon. By the mid-1990s, Israel and Hezbollah were locked in a grinding conflict in southern Lebanon. For Hezbollah, victory meant continuing resistance and inflicting steady losses on Israeli troops. For Israel, any attack was a failure, since its occupation of the security zone was meant to prevent precisely that. Increasingly, Israeli casualties led many in Israel to question the purpose of the occupation. In 1996, under Prime Minister Shimon Peres, Israel launched Operation Grapes of Wrath, a massive air and artillery campaign aimed at stopping Hezbollah attacks and pressuring the Lebanese government to rein the group. The operation also had domestic political motives. Peres faced an upcoming election and sought to prove his strength as a leader. Officially, Israel claimed it wanted to force Hezbollah out of southern Lebanon, but the offensive deliberately targeted populated areas, driving about 400,000 civilians from their homes. The campaign culminated in the tragedy at the village of Qana, where Israeli shells struck a UN compound, sheltering hundreds of civilians. Over 100 people, mostly women and children, were killed. Ultimately, Operation Grapes of Wrath failed to break Hezbollah or secure Israel's northern border. It deepened Lebanese resentment, damaged Israel's image internationally, and reinforced the perception that Israeli power was being used with little regard for civilian lives. In his book, The Making of the Modern Middle East, A Personal History, British correspondent Jeremy Bowen writes the following. When Israel goes to war, two clocks start running. One counts the time needed by the military. The other is for the time left until the outside world demands a ceasefire, which Israeli diplomats work hard to slow down. It is remarkable that up until the 1923 attacks of Hamas, Israel had fought relatively short wars. This was also the case in 2006, when a war started on the 12th of July 2006 and continued until a United Nations brokered ceasefire went into effect in the morning on the 14th of August 2006. Formally, it ended on September 8th. When Israel lifted its naval blockade of Lebanon. This marked the third Israeli invasion of Lebanon since 1978. It must also be noted that the run-up to the 2006 war was marked by continuous Hezbollah border raids into Israel. With the outbreak of the Gaza war from October 2023 onwards, Hezbollah opened fire at Israel, and this prompted yet another Israeli invasion on the 1st of October 2024. On the 27th of November that year, a ceasefire agreement was signed by Israel and Lebanon, yet the Israelis continue to occupy parts of southern Lebanon. The Lebanese government has announced its intention to disarm Hezbollah by the end of this year, but it seems unable to achieve this. The country is struggling with a deep economic crisis and an army that lacks sufficient firepower. There are currently 9,300 Lebanese soldiers stationed south of the Litani River, but increasing that number requires international assistance. Meanwhile, the UN mission UNIFIL is preparing for a gradual withdrawal by the end of 2026, which further increases the pressure on the Lebanese army. President Aoun is trying to find a diplomatic solution through indirect negotiations with Israel. Meanwhile, the United States and France, which are guaranteeing the ceasefire, are insisting on the implementation of the Lebanese disarmament plan. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem called disarmament unthinkable as long as Israel occupies Lebanese territory. And despite Hezbollah being weakened by Israel's efforts, most notably the electronic device attacks in September 2024, we can assume the conflict is far from over.